let's check listening or the different reasons for listening, because the skills that we have, there are lots of small skills, listening skills that you'll put in your tool belt. There's more than a dozen, and some of them depend on which type of listening you are engaging in. There's actually 4 different types of listening. Appreciative listening is not on our list here. That's not something we teach in this class. It's just listening for enjoyment. You're listening to your music because you like it. It helps you de-stress, or you enjoy it. And so we don't teach that one. But we are going to look at informational listening, critical or evaluative listening, and relational or empathic listening. I do love this quote that I have here on the right of your screen, because this is one of our biggest problems in listening, is we're too busy listening so that we can reply instead of listening to understand. And so if we can focus in on listening for understanding is our goal, you will become a better listener, and then we can work on our replies later. So informational listening, that's when you're listening for information in class, in a doctor's office. Your boss is giving you work to do and you want to make sure you understand everything you need to do. So in the center of this slide, I have a list of skills that are helpful when listening for information. You can read more about these in the chapter, but a couple of these are good in most situations. Down here at the bottom, you have asking questions. That's usually a great thing to do in most any listening situation. And for paraphrasing. Paraphrasing, there's 2 different types. One that we would use for informational, and another type that we use when we're listening in a relational or empathic context. And so I'll explain both of those when we get to that particular section. Critical or evaluative listening is when we're trying to evaluate information. Usually there's some element of persuasion involved in that, not always. When you're just watching news stories or seeing news stories in your social media posts, you should be evaluative, because a lot of the sound bites or the headlines are opinions to get your attention, and if you believe everything you read, that will be a problem. You're not being evaluative and you're buying into false information. A lot of times things are taken out of context, so you have to be evaluative in looking at the information. We're going to work on that a little bit more detail in our public speaking unit. But you see this on television shows, like all those competition shows, The Voice, The American Idol, America's Got Talent, The World of Dance. It's all the judges, the panel of judges are being evaluative. They're listening for or watching for, particular dance skills or your voice and things like that. So in this class, we're going to be using this not only for you to make sure that you have good information for your speeches and that you are presenting good, credible information. You're also going to be evaluating your classmates, their speeches, and not just listening to the fun stuff like how ice cream is made or who invented it and all those good things, or hot air ballooning, right? But you're also going to be listening for, was it organized? Are they demonstrating all the components that go into a speech, analyzing their delivery or evaluating it? And so you'll be doing both informational listening and evaluative listening when we get to our speeches. Don't worry, those aren't until October and November. We have a whole month and a half to go and a lot to learn on how to put together a speech and how to deliver it. So don't worry, we will work on public speaking shortly. But you are introduced to Aristotle and his ideas on persuasion, ethos, logos, and pathos. And so you'll get a little bit of that here in this chapter, and you'll get more of that when we study persuasion in our next unit. Relational or empathic listening is when we are trying to connect with another person, we're trying to comfort, right? So one of your friends or family members is distressed. How do you typically respond in those situations? I mean, not they're distressed, but sometimes we get distressed because we don't know what to say. And so that's part of our challenge, is learning how to respond, which is very complex. I would suggest a couple of things. One, sometimes you don't need to say anything at all. They just need that shoulder to cry on. They need a hug. They just need you to sit there and cry with them. So maybe try the nonverbal responses first and then slowly work on the what to say. In fact, I know, especially for men, since they're more task oriented or instrumental when they communicate, when somebody's distressed, they're wanting to fix it and they problem solve so we can make it better. And so sometimes, especially the guys, get really stressed out. I don't know what to say. And so you're kind of off the hook, right? So let's try to be nonverbal. We can even ask them, well, do you need help solving the problem, or would you just like me to listen? Right? It's okay to ask those questions, right? So let's start with the nonverbal response. We can ask them what they need. They may not know, and then we can work at some of our verbal responses. So I have a whole list here on this particular slide on supportive responses. They are not all in your textbook. I have taken these from several different resources, but they're all tools that can go in your tool belt, and you can pick and choose which ones you want to use in different situations. Advising is a response. I recommend that be your last choice, though. You may find that something has worked for you, so you suggest it to them, but it might not really be geared towards their situation or their personality. It could be bad advice, and then they're going to hold you responsible. So advice giving, and I'm really bad at that. I love to give advice. Make that your last response, not your first one. A judging response. It's not being judgmental, but it's making an evaluation of what they've said or what they've done. It could be positive or it could be constructive. It could be, wow, you're really handling this really well. That would be a supportive, I'm making an evaluation of what they're saying or doing. So that would be a judging response. Supporting is showing solidarity, empathizing, praising. Don't agree if you disagree, though. Be genuine in that. Asking questions, but you need to be sincere with your questions. It's about understanding them, their situation, not the counterfeit questions. Those are where you're actually sending a message and you usually disguise it in the form of a question because you're trying to make a point. That's a counterfeit question. That's not true listening. Analyzing is offering an interpretation. Comforting is reassuring comments. It's going to be okay. But not everything is always comforting like we think it is. So we can get ourselves in trouble here. There's other fish in the sea when somebody broke up is not a comforting response. But we say it because we just don't know better. Prompting, little filler words. Oh, wow. Really? They could actually be words or those fillers. The Right? And then reflecting. Reflecting is reflecting on what the speaker is saying. It's paraphrasing, active listening are all the same thing. Okay? Now, if you want to have fun with this, take a look at these, maybe jot them down, and then I want you to look for examples of these. I have a video from Big Bang Theory, and you can watch the clip and you can look for supportive or even unsupportive listening behaviors in this video. Again, you open up the PowerPoint directly that's posted in our folder in order to make these hyperlink works. This is a date night for Amy and Sheldon Cooper. They're a couple if you haven't seen the show, and so it's fun to test yourself. So I encourage you to do that. Our last skill is this thing called paraphrasing or active listening or reflecting. I like paraphrasing best. I think that just summarizes it well. But paraphrasing is easier said than done sometimes, and some of you will pick it up very quickly, and some of you it'll be a little bit more challenging. Summarize the speaker in your own words, what they said in your own words. If you repeat what they said, that's actually called parroting. Polly want a cracker? Polly want a cracker? And you don't sound very good when you do that. So make sure you summarize in your own words. Here's what I think, you're saying, let me see if I've got this right. Okay, so summarize in your own words. I also want you to not only listen for their content, the what they said, but I want you to reflect on what they might be feeling. Play detective here. Read between the lines or listen between the lines, because we are often uncomfortable at expressing our feelings. Certain feelings are okay. Oh, I'm totally stressed out. But we don't usually say that I'm really jealous of the other person, right? There's just some things we don't tend to say or express, and we hide them in our messages. So you play detective and try to identify how they're feeling. Do not give advice. Do not problem solve. Do not bring in more information. We're only focusing on them, what they said, and how they might be feeling. So here's a little example. We're going to pretend that we're friends, and I'm coming to you. I'm kind of bothered, and so I'm venting to you. And so here's my situation, and you're listening. Man, Stan always wants to tell me about who he's going out with. He gives me detailed descriptions of their dates that take hours, and he never seems to ask about who I'm going out with or what I'm interested in. How are you going to respond? Summarize what I just said, and then how do you think I'm feeling? Could you pick up on my tone of voice in that clip? Right? So then you would formulate a response. Now, a paraphrase is just asking verification and demonstrate that you understand. So I put a few phrases down here. You usually start, okay, let me see if I understand you. It sounds like you might be really tired or frustrated about hearing about Stan's love life. Right? There's my feeling, there's some content, right? And maybe you're just a little frustrated that and put out that he doesn't select information about who you're dating. Is that it? So I'm identifying feelings and thoughts, the content, and trying to verify, did I process the information? Did I decode? Did I interpret correctly? Right? So use phrases that sound more like you, or the best version of you can be, right? To work on your paraphrasing. This is your temptation, though. Don't give advice. Don't problem solve. It's only focusing in on them. That's your challenge. So you can start thinking about all of those different listening skills to use, and how you might be able to improve your various relationships with your listening skills. You are introduced to different listening styles, your particular preference for making sense of messages and processing messages. And I believe that you can see a short section of this in your textbook. But if you also can learn not only what your preferred style is, if you can learn about others and adapt your messages in ways that it's easier for them to understand, you will be a better communicator. For the longest time, I thought my mother-in-law didn't like me because when I talked to her on the phone, she was very short and brief and abrupt and to the point. And so I finally learned that she hates talking on the phone. So on the phone, she is very time-oriented, get to the point, bottom line. In person, she'll give you all day. She's people-oriented, wants to be face-to-face with you. And so that particular channel, the telephone, she's very time-oriented. So then I figured that out. When I called her, I was brief on the phone, and then I engaged in longer or in-depth conversations in person. And so you can adapt your communication to others if you understand their listening styles. It's kind of fun to figure out just by observing and knowing personalities. So how do we summarize all of this? I think this is a great summary of listening. And then I'm going to leave you with a couple of tips after this on other things that you might want to learn more about. But if we really want to talk about really good quality listening, the Chinese word for deep listening actually combines the symbols for ear, mind, eyes, and heart. And really, that's what we're doing. We'd want to listen with our ears. There's an expression that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we speak. Not a bad proverb or saying, right? Listen with your ears. Really be thoughtful in your thinking, and as you're listening to somebody, be in the moment, be mindful, pay attention, minimize distractions, look at the person, listen with your eyes. You can see people getting upset in their facial expressions. You can see the tears about to come. That's being observant. Listen with your heart. You're trying to understand. Why are they stressed out? Why are they so frustrated? Where is this coming from? Look beneath the iceberg. Dive on in. And if you just remember this, and maybe you don't know all the other words of all the other skills, this is a really good summary. But I do challenge you to try to learn those other skills and the other names and put them in your tool belt and pull them out. So I have a couple other extra optional videos here that I'm going to show you that might be helpful for some of you, parents, and working on being conversational. So I do have a couple of short video clips from an old television show, Everybody Loves Raymond. It happens to be a parenting scenario, but it's great examples of active listening or paraphrasing. So this is fun. It's entertaining. You probably haven't seen this before and you're exhausted on your Netflix options, so enjoy that. And if you want to have a better conversation with people, here's another video to try. This one's a little bit longer. I think it's I'm not sure, 10, 15 minutes. I'm not exactly sure. I don't tend to post long ones. 10 ways to have better conversations, right? And so this gives you some tips on 10 ways to sort of be a better conversationalist. And so I would encourage you to watch that. Again, completely optional.